Come meet a community with a long history in America. From the time of their first Alaskan settlements in the 1700s, the Russian Americans have been sharing their Old World traditions with New World friends. This week, we'll learn about life's joys, challenges, and contradictions, and get an authentic taste of the Russian American experience on World in America. Russia, a land of scientific, artistic, and intellectual genius, a political force from the reign of the Russian Empire through the cycle of Soviet influence, a world of modern culture and traditional values. All this and more collected in one vast land. Russia's immense size almost defies imagination. This is a country so big that it spans 11 time zones and covers over 6.5 million square miles of land. One of Russia's great writers, Alexander Pushkin, wrote that it is better to have dreamed 1,000 dreams that never were than never to have dreamed at all. This same feeling of hope inspires today's Russian Americans. Their uniquely Russian spirit grew out of the country's long history and includes traits like resilience, prudence, strong feeling, and a deep desire for close relationships. When we return, we'll delve into the nuances of Russian American life on World in America. We're back with World in America. Getting to know the Russian Americans can be somewhat like looking at the country's much-loved Matryoshka dolls. Keep going deeper, and you'll always find something new and beautiful inside.
The Russian Americans are those who respect and love Russia, who speak the Russian language, who identify themselves as Russian Americans.
A Russian American is a person who live in America but save Russian tradition, Russian culture.
The Russian Americans, in my opinion, are the people who came from the former Soviet Union, from the different parts of that country, who respect, know Russian culture, know Russian language, and who are interested in all events which are happening right now in Russia.
The Russian people have a long history in America. The first wave of Russians came to the Alaskan territory as fur traders in the 1700s. This frontier community thrived in the subsequent years, and by 1795, the Russian Orthodox Church had established a strong presence there.
The first wave was not immigrants, it was internal migration. Through Siberia, the first Russians came to Alaska.
Many of these early settlers returned to Russia when the United States purchased Alaska in 1867.
When they left back, the Russian Orthodox Church had a lot of influence, and they had 12,000 parishioners after the Russians left from the ethnic minorities of Alaska then.
In the late 19th century, Russians fled to the U.S. to escape religious persecution. These immigrants, many of them Jewish, settled primarily in New York and Pennsylvania.
The immigration started in 1920 and it continued to 1939. After the revolution in Russia in 1917, when the Civil War began.
The people who came to the United States at that time, they wanted to come back all the time. So they preserve the culture, the language, most of all other waves.
Between 1820 and 1920, it's estimated that over 3 million people immigrated from Russia to the United States.
When we have been to Nyack, it's New York upstate, to the Russian Orthodox Church, it's a big community there of first immigration wave.
The children born to immigrants of the post-revolution period worked hard to preserve their language, although many of them had no first-hand knowledge of Russia.
All people there never been to Russia. All of them were born in Europe, in United States, but they speak perfect Russian.
The Soviet-era immigrants who arrived during the 1940s and 50s held very different perspectives about their homeland than those who came before them.
Another wave was after the Second World War II, and it was a little bit different. The people who came from the concentration camps, who were afraid of returning home because they knew that they were on the territory occupied with the Germans, and they were afraid of returning home. So it was a different wave of the immigration.
Yet another wave came in the 1970s, when increasingly lenient immigration policies offered more opportunities for Jewish Russians to live abroad.
It was mainly for the Jewish people who were allowed to leave the country. And the idea that they would leave then was to Israel, but many of them really had the goal to come to the United States.
Since the changes of the 1990s, Russians have continued to travel to the U.S., many of them highly skilled professionals seeking employment.
Now, I wouldn't even call it the immigration, because it's again the migration, because Russia is a democratic country now, so there is no political reason for people to leave it. Anybody can leave it, and there are young people, professionals who are well established, who just would like to live in the open world, and they come here to try to work. Many of them work at the Wall Street and in many businesses in New York, as far as I know, and I wouldn't call it immigration anymore.
But even highly skilled professionals, some of them educated in the world's best universities in Russia, face challenges in the States. For many, the greatest hurdle is the English language.
The first is language. Language problem is a major problem for all new immigrants, for Russian, for everybody, for Russian too. Language, for me it's serious, it's a major problem.
Although many Russians speak some English, it's not good enough to have good positions, good jobs.
Despite strong credentials, it can be nearly impossible to secure work without English fluency.
Many people who came to the United States are very intelligent, who came with their many diplomas of universities and institutes from former Soviet Union, but they are not accepted by United States.
Sometimes I understand it from the American perspective. They look at the person and they think about him in terms of how he can express himself. And though the level of the Russians with their educational status is one of the highest in all the ethnic groups in the United States, but the lack of the English language really prevents for them to be accepted as a very educated people.
Even more challenges pop up when closely held values clash with common cultural practices. America's hectic, scattered society sometimes makes it hard to be spontaneous and find unscheduled times with friends.
In Russia, my neighbor can knock my door and ask, "How are you today?" Without any occasion. "How are you today? Do you have a soul? Do you have some piece of bread or some new magazines or something?" Without calling, without any occasion, without nothing. Right here, we need to make appointment for visit to our friend, and you know.
Privacy aside, it's much easier to drop in when friends maintain regular schedules and, more importantly, live nearby. But although it's tough to connect when people are far apart, mobility does have its advantages.
Here, the Russians love the idea that you can go to any place of the United States to work. You can change your career, you can start a new career, you can start a new education. And of course, they are all proud of their children who accomplish much more than them.
If you do make time to join them for a relaxing evening at home, you'll find nothing but warm hospitality, lively conversation, and deep personal connections. Life in a new land can bring families even closer together, along with challenges and new opportunities. Unexpected possibilities abound for building the family structure.
We want to have a baby, and doctors said to us it's impossible for us in Russia. They said it's impossible at all. But we try in the United States, and so we have a son and we have a daughter, and hopefully maybe something more.
Like all families, life for these Russian Americans is filled with work, school, and quality time together. So how do they keep their Russian culture alive?
You need to participate and to know cultural events in Russia, and even economy and political events.
When we speak about with our children about Russians, about Russian tradition, we try to give him to be him character with a patriotism of Russian and knows of all Russian culture, because it's a language for all their life.
I stress with my children that they have to be intelligent, honest people. They have to know culture, their own culture and the American culture, and respect both of these cultures, and respect the different cultures of other people, because we live in the world where many nationalities live in one country.
In this community and others across America, the Russian Orthodox Church plays a vital role in keeping families close to their culture. Although not everyone practices the faith, the Church's deep influence, spanning almost 1,000 years of history, still connects the Russian Americans to their homeland.
We have so many problems for young person, and religion-based help them to save their life, to save their lifestyle.
But my American friends, they usually ask me, like, why do you do this? Why can't you go outside? Why are you going to church on Sunday and can't go out play in the park?
You need to know your religion. You need to be proud of your own roots. If your roots are Russian, you have to be proud of them.
And I have to tell them that it's part of my Russian culture.
They're like, why do you have to go to church? I mean, and I'm like, well, I'm Russian Orthodox and it's my religion.
I like to see in my children different values, not only Russian, but American as well, because there are some things that I like in this country.
The natural growing pains of teenage life double when dealing with both the generation gap and a new culture. While it takes hard work and extra time to maintain ethnic connections in this fragmented world, it pays off. the Russian Americans' strong devotion to family life can help overcome the hurdles.
There is always a generation gap for any family, anywhere in the world, but talking about immigrants, it's more than just generation gap. It's the culture gap. Because when kids get education in American schools, they really lose, unless the parents work really hard, which is very difficult because they really have to work hard outside the house. They lose connections. Very often they lose the language to begin with, because it's the theory of immigration that in the first generation you want to be like others, like Americans. So you don't want to be different. You are ashamed of your language and of your culture sometimes.
I speak with my younger sister. I see the gap. It's only 7 years different, but I see the gap.
Parents who don't speak English well enough, they don't understand what's happening at school. Even going to the parents' meeting, they cannot communicate. So they lose these contacts and ties to the children.
When we return, we'll go back to school to learn how the Russian Americans are keeping their culture alive. We'll hear a poem from Pushkin and take a taste of red caviar. All coming up next on World in America. Welcome back to World in America.
Пожалуй, мы можем начать. Правда? Да. Девочки.
It's time to get down to the basics of the Russian American community. And what better place to learn the ABCs of culture than at school? These kids are studying their Russian heritage through music, language lessons, sports, and literature.
I always wanted for my kids to have something here in their life comparable with what we had in our childhood back in Russia.
Она сказала, что они точно пойдут в зоопарк. Когда Дениска встала за стола, вдруг...
Why do you study Russian language?
So I speak Russian very, very good.
Right now we have about 200 students enrolled and another 200 who are in and out.
Я на спектакль вас приглашаю, там будет множество затей. Я этих кукол обожаю, как будто собственных детей. Мы вам покажем представление, это просто загляденье, это просто наслаждение, это просто объедение.
But it's definitely not all work and no play at this school.
I like all the different classes that are very fun. They can be classes that will help you in school and just classes for fun.
We read fun books and I go to science and we make fun stuff.
When they're not having fun, the kids are learning how to fight, in a nice way. There's lots of time to blow off steam during a lively wrestling match. And it's not just exercise, it's also education.
I like that we learn these cool moves, like how to trip somebody. And I like that we wrestle.
Sambo means self-defense without weapon. It was born in the beginning of last century in Russia, and it's a combination of basically most of the moves from different type of martial arts or wrestling. It's a sort of ultimate martial art.
Давай, крути! На него, Миша, на него! Накрывай! Ну, помнишь? Раз, два, три, 4, 5. Время. Вот так. Победитель. Молодцы.
At some point, the kids have to knuckle down and hit the books. But that can be fun too, especially when they're learning about their heritage through the giants of Russian literature, authors like Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, and Pushkin.
Дети посмотрели и сказали, это президент. Я подумала, да, вообще, наверное, это президент. Так что, видите, ребята, конечно...
Many Russians consider Alexander Pushkin to be the father of modern Russian literature. His writings celebrated the nuances of language and expressed the Russian experience in rich detail.
Like we talk about it and really get to like know the book. And I just like the school because it gives you lots of experience.
This is what we wanted. We wanted them to be bilingual, and it looks like it happens this way.
When you think of Russian cuisine, imagine the savory, earthy flavors of potatoes, cabbage, beets, and red meats. Mix in high cuisine treats like caviar and blini, and you know what it tastes like to eat at the Firebird Restaurant in Times Square.
We're located in Times Square, New York City, 365 West 46th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. Name of the restaurant, it comes across from the Firebird Ballet, which is one of Stravinsky's ballets that he wrote in 1911. He wrote the music for it, that was done in Paris at the time. And it's also a Russian folklore, a little mythology about the Firebird, similar to the phoenix in a way.
With deceptively simple ingredients that combine to create intense flavors, these dishes are a feast for the eyes and the taste buds.
I'm going to have my assistant Igor. He's going to show us how we prepare zakuska. First we're going to start off with a little clarified butter that we're going to put on the plate. This helps so that blini doesn't stick to the plate, and moisture gives a little moisture to the blini. So he's going to spread it all around the plate. We're going to take our blini. A blini, it's almost like a little pancake or a crepe, you can tell. And here we use a buckwheat blini. Next, after the blini's placed, we're going to put a little sour cream onto the blini, so he's going to spread just a little using the back of the spoon.
There's a certain etiquette to partaking in the meal, but once you know the basics, it's open to creative interpretation.
The great thing about the zakuska is you can mix and match. You can have meat and fish together. So we're going to take a little tea smoked duck, a little salmon caviar. Great. And then next one, we're going to take a little beet caviar and we're going to add it into the mix, and then we're going to roll it. There's no wrong way or right way to do this. It's whatever you like. You can put it mix and match together, or just pick one item and roll it and eat it.
This is food fit for the czars, though with some assembly required. With dishes like this, one thing is certain, you won't ever leave the Firebird hungry. Like any proud ethnic group, the Russian Americans are eager to preserve their history through festivals and cultural center events. At this gathering, here on New York's Hudson River, the kids can spend time exploring their Russian heritage with other kids of similar backgrounds.
We are called the Russian American Cultural Heritage Center, and we are relatively young in terms of the history for organization, which is only 5 years old. But we started different projects, and one of the projects is targeted on the families and the children. That helps the kids to see that they are not outsiders, that they are not alone. We started doing the Children's Festival of Russian Culture.
It's a fun event peppered with emblems of the homeland, matryoshka dolls, old-fashioned costumes, and spirited music. Even something as simple as learning the words to one song can help the kids connect to their own ethnic traditions.
that gives them the possibility to see other kids performing, which they like a lot, to see that they are not alone here, to see that they need the Russian language to communicate to the kids from the Russian families, and hopefully to see that what their grandparents and parents are talking in the family really exists.
Regardless of how the world changes, the children are its future, and these young Russian Americans are learning how to make it bright. But what do the adults think about the future of their Russian American community?
That's a good future, I think so. The community will be a little bit shrink because not too much new immigrations right now, but they're involved in American life and they will be great, hopefully.
Would like to be a part of American culture, sharing what we have and adapting what Americans, the best of what Americans have.
The future of this community is a bright future.